with before his Hollywood Bowl appearance celebrating Sondheim. We'll also get the tea about his roles in Little Shop, Rent, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, Into the Woods, and of course, Spring Awakening. And we'll be chatting about his original music too, so get ready with me, your favorite host with the sassy most. Raise a glass and let the drinks begin. Everybody rise, it's On the Rocks.
Thank you for being
Boulevard.
Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death.
I'd like to propose a toast.
This is On the Rocks with Alexander, where I drink with your favorite celebrities as we talk about fashion, entertainment, pop culture, reality TV, and, well, that's about it. So pop a cork, lean back, and raise a glass to On the Rocks.
Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Lord have mercy, buttons and bows and pantyhose. On the Rocks podcast, a place where we too glam to give a damn. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at On the Rocks On Air, and on Facebook, On the Rocks Radio Show. Send me an email, book me for a wedding, funeral, quinceañera, bris. I don't care. I will show up. Info at ontherocksradioshow.com. The show's presented by Straw Hut Media. You can watch and or listen to our now over 300 episodes at ontherocksradioshow.com. Watch us on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, on the Outlet.tv app, Facebook Watch, streaming with pride on SVTV, and on Channel 31 on the East Coast. All right, let's get the show on the road. We have a lot to talk about. The man of the hour. P.S. We stand in solidarity with the actors' strike, so our chat will follow suit. Skylar Astin is a celebrated actor with a varied career across stage and screen. Most recently, he returned to the theater in the off-Broadway revival of Little Shop of Horrors as Seymour. Also, he and the rest of the cast of Spring Awakening revisited the roles and re-sparked the cultural phenomena which put Astin on the map and went on to win 8 Tony Awards in 2007. And he performed a special rendition of Touch Me at this year's Tony Awards with the original cast. Native New Yorker, he portrayed the iconic role of Tony in Carnegie Hall's performance of West Side Story and received rave reviews and Encore's production of Kurt Vonnegut's God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. He was also seen in Pulitzer Prize nominee Teresa Rebeck's play What We're Up Against, and he performed alongside Sutton Foster, Patina Miller, and Cheyenne Jackson in Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods at the Hollywood Bowl, which I saw twice. And he also performed in Rent at the Hollywood Bowl as well. And of course, we loved him in Kennedy Center's How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. You also have to check out Skylar's original music, Easy, Gravity, and I Want to Dance With You, being his last few singles. And we're going to be ending today's show with the acoustic version of his single, Without You. And July 30th, he comes back to the Hollywood Bowl with Patti Lupone, Brian Stokes Mitchell, Sutton Foster, Norm Lewis, and our friend Sierra for Everybody Rise, a Stephen Sondheim celebration. And of course, this intro only includes his theater and music work. If I included everything, I'd pass out from being out of breath. Please welcome Skylar Astin.
That was a rousing intro. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of myself in this moment.
Well, it's so funny when you look at your theater resume. It's like all the shows we grew up with, from Little Shop to Rent, Into the West Side Story. It's like, yeah, you did them. What does that little theater kid growing up in New York have to think about this career? And you've literally had the opportunity to play these roles that most kids salivate all their lives to play.
Yeah, some of them have been my dream roles, like, How to Succeed and Tony and West Side Story. And now some of the stuff I'm actually going to be singing on Sunday, I'm dipping into some dream role territory. But something like Little Shop of Horrors was my one random musical theater blind spot that I didn't know any of. Literally, I know it's very surprising, especially being like a Jewish boy who loves musical theater. Yeah. I didn't know Grow for Me. I didn't know Get It. I never saw the movie. I mean, I knew the Little Shop of Horrors, the opening, and of course, suddenly Seymour. But that was it. And so being a replacement for my first time ever, I was like, I gotta learn this thing cold, like freezing cold. So but yes, to answer your actual question, it is absolutely like so many dreams have come true. I feel so lucky and blessed. And like, it is always very important for me to never settle in that and always do the work and like show up to these situations. Like on Sunday, but so many of these people that I'm performing alongside are heroes of mine. Brian Stokes Mitchell, of course, and Sutton and Patti, literally all of them. But now it's like, I can't rest. I must do the work and I must show them that I belong and then some.
I want to know what kind of kid you were. How did you get bitten by the acting bug to begin with?
So it was actually, I have my mother to thank and blame because I I always had a fondness for seeing theater. I grew up in the tri-state area, and I was lucky enough to get that, as like birthday gifts or Hanukkah gifts. I would always go like once or twice a year to the theater. I was such a fan and grew up playing piano. For the people seeing the video portion, behind me is actually my childhood piano from New York.
Oh, beautiful.
I had shipped out here to LA. So I've always played. I've always loved to sing, but only really recreationally. Played a little bit of sports growing up. And my mom kind of like was floating this idea in my ear of trying out for this local production of Godspell. So much so that finally, when I just almost did it to kind of not shut her up necessarily, but kind of win a bet, because she was like, look, if we go after basketball practice to Nyack, New York, and you audition for Godspell, I will take you to this amazing Italian restaurant that is now no longer in that town. But I thought I was getting one over on her because I knew that the auditions would be finished by the time she was mentioning. But it actually turned out that, just like most auditions, it was running a little late. And so they squeezed a little room for me, especially the fact that I showed up, in like glistening dry sweat, basically Troy Bolton from High School Musical, like in a literal basketball uniform. And, I sang a little bit of Happy Birthday. I happen to know a couple of musical theater songs because I was a fan. Totally unprepared, most unprepared I've ever been for an audition, because I didn't think I was actually going to have to do it. And then I was lucky enough to get Jesus and Godspell, and that started the 180. Yeah.
Now, I know you did theater summer camp. Do you have any funny theater camp stories?
I mean, there's a whole documentary about us. Funny theater camp stories. I mean, it's more like charming theater camp stories. Like we would use all of the sports areas as like rehearsal spaces. The tennis courts were exclusively where we would run our lines, and all the kids that were lucky enough to get kind of bigger parts, because since it was only 2 weeks, we would elect to take free swim just so we could literally like learn Romeo and Juliet or, Les Mis or whatever we were a part of. So there's a lot of stories like that. Trying to think. I definitely like got in trouble for like kissing, you know what I mean? Like there was like those kinds of stories, and I was like, you think that's bad? You should see what's going on in the dorm. The boys' dorm. But yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy. I'm sure some would come to mind. But yeah, it's just like all that charming stuff where I just got bitten by the bug and made friends for life. I mean, still, I'm on a group chat with all the people I went to camp with, and they actually returned a couple weeks ago, and I was actually stuck in a thunderstorm. I was ready to go. I was there. I was like booked. I was at the airport even, and then it was really, really bad weather in New York, and so I wasn't able to go. But yeah, Stage Door Manor holds a very significant place in my heart, and certainly it was a big like seminal moment for me as a young theater person to grow into a professional theater person, and that had a big hand in it.
Now, growing up in theater, doing shows as a kid, what came easily to you? What were more of challenges for you?
In the like certain roles, or like singing,
just like in the whole acting, singing, dancing process.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the singing came quite naturally just because I was a musical person. I had a lot of like really big eureka moments when it came to acting. When it came down to like not only drawing from my own experiences, which, you learn to kind of do, but also I was doing a community theater piece, and this amazing director, Tim McDonald, who still does a lot of great youth theater work. He really like changed my thought process. I mean, it's very obvious, basic stuff to me now, but just walking and talking and behaving like the character, and not just kind of saying these lines with conviction, but everything, embodying it, and really thinking about how that person, would grab the apple off the table. And those kinds of little like simple truths became such like monumental like moments for me that I still think about to this day whenever I take on a character.
I have to know, we share personal stories on the show a lot, especially when we're drinking vodka. But I need to know, was it heartbreaking when you had to come out to your family and theater friends as straight?
Thankfully, they were very accepting of my sexual orientation. And I think that the same way that I respect anybody else for who they are and being who they are and harnessing who they are, I was definitely accepted as well. And it's kind of an interesting thing when you're at like a theater camp and you're one of the only straight boys
Yeah.
there. That has its advantages too. But I was with like one person. I wasn't like I wasn't playing the field. I was like had a girlfriend per summer. So, you know,
Good boy.
it didn't suck to be a straight boy in musical theater, but I did
I'm sure.
did not abuse those privileges like some people did.
Okay, the show that kind of started it for you all, Spring Awakening, you even stepped away from your studies at NYU to do that show. How did you get involved and what was that rehearsal process like?
Well, actually, I was attached to it from high school because I auditioned for a workshop, or no, not a workshop, actually. We did this thing, the Lincoln Center American Songbook Series. And it was a big, hot audition. And I remember we were really reading from the source material from the Spring Awakening play. Those were the scenes we were doing. And I remember just being like, what is this? Because it was really intense and period. And we had to sing rock music, but I really wanted it, as did everyone. And I was lucky enough to get that. And so I was kind of attached to it. The only people that were attached to that went on to do the Atlantic Theater run and eventually the Broadway run were myself, John Gallagher Jr., and Leah Michelle. And there were some other really great people in that reading. But every time, Leah was attached to it even before then. And every time they kept making her re-audition, just because these as people, we were like growing and in motion. And so was the play. And so, to align with like the specific productions that they were doing at the time, it was kind of a fresh beginning. So it was a little tricky though, because in between the American Songbook Series and the eventual Atlantic Theater run, I did go to NYU for a year, and NYU has very specific rules about not only as a freshman not being able to do the school productions, but you definitely can't do outside productions. So I had to take a leave of absence, but I had to finish that semester. So I was kind of in two places at once. In fact, Michael Mayer once famously said, week 3 out of 5, when I was missing most of the rehearsals, like, why did we even hire you? You're never here. And I was heartbroken, but just trying so hard to keep up. And eventually, I finished my semester and was able to just fully devote myself to Spring Awakening's final couple weeks of rehearsal. And then the rest was history.
And I want to talk about coming back to the show 15 years later, the reunion, coming back as a bona fide star, everything you've accomplished, all the obstacles and auditions you've gotten through, back to where you started. Was that surreal, revisiting that piece?
Surreal is like an understatement. It was so weird to feel like so much time has passed. I mean, certain people are parents now, and we were such kids then, but also, no time has passed. I mean, the amount of specific inside jokes that we all have, that we could all say one thing and everybody knows exactly what we're talking about, it's countless, down to the YouTube wasn't really around as much then, but down to the silly viral videos we would watch at the time from E-Bound's world. But also just the material itself just came flooding back, and the emotions attached to them. And as we were rehearsing, all of the discoveries, that remembering those first discoveries of actually when we, for instance, a small story is Bill T. Jones was our choreographer, but the choreography for the song Bitch of Living was kind of born out of a little bit of a response from John Gallagher Jr. to Bill T. Jones out of frustration because we couldn't understand what he wanted at the time. And that's not to say that Bill was difficult. It was just this show in its creation was so raw and alive that finding it together became a true collaborative effort. And to the creative team's credit and the cast's credit, nobody got too precious. It was kind of a best idea wins environment. And so we really, for that reason, I mean, I know a lot of original company members of most shows feel this way, but we really feel ownership over those roles, or at least in the creation of those roles. Now, of course, it's been passed on and, anyone could play it, of course, but at the time it was really specific. I mean, even in the score that we were referencing, now they've notated it properly, but it says Skylar, it doesn't say Georg, it says Skylar and Lauren and John and Gideon. And it's a while. It's that's what we were working off of, actually when we got back together too, which was pretty crazy.
Now, coming back 15 years later, how do you think your craft has changed the most over those 15 years?
You know, so many people were saying when it was such a big fat hit on Broadway, you kids are really going to understand the importance of this. Probably not for decades to come. I mean, at least 10, 15 years. And I was like, what a wild statement to say, because I don't disagree, but I just couldn't fathom what that means. And now here we are, like in that exact spot. And it is absolutely true. I mean, this is something, that as people know, especially then, like things weren't really recorded, especially not properly. And so I've just been telling people of this show that I've been doing for so long, and it's almost become a memory to me. And to then go back and get back into the material and sing things, having certain things come a little easier. Certain things are a little bit more challenging, like jumping up on a chair without bending your knees. But then just witnessing the cast all coming together, like someone like Lily Cooper, who now has like multiple Tony nominations and is never not working on Broadway. Someone like Jonathan Groff, who was stellar then and, in many ways, an award-winning performance, but seeing who he is now coming back to that role and acting it down. Like he was not marking, we weren't faking it. Like we weren't too cool for school at music stands. Like we were going for it, within reason, of course. No one was fully undressing anymore, but just to see everybody connecting emotionally to this material in such a different way, it's not that we didn't understand it then, but we just understand it a lot more deeply now.
I love that statement. And like we mentioned, you played some pretty iconic roles like, Tony, Seymour, Mark and Rent, and of course, The Baker and Into the Woods. These are roles that we know as theater kids, as theater people over and over. We know the cast albums backwards and forwards and forwards and backwards and backwards and forwards. What is your creative process when you get a role like this, paying homage to, the original idea of the character, but also making it your own? Like when you get that script, of course, not for Little Shop because it was new to you, but when you get that script, like The Baker and Into the Woods, where do you begin your creative process?
Yeah, how do you like block out Anthony Rapp and Chip Zien?
Exactly.
Even the cadence, not just like the voice, just literally the way they phrase things. That's such a great question, and I think about that often, and I'm thinking about that now as I prepare for Everybody Rise. Thankfully, I was just telling Doug Peck, who's the associate musical director, I have a pretty good talent for compartment for separating. A lot of actors, that could be really tough. Like they have to fully avoid. Yeah. I try to avoid, but if it's necessary or if it's for context or if it's just burning bright in my memory, like for things like Into the Woods and Rent specifically, I try to like harken back to like the material and I really look at the notes, especially with Sondheim. A lot of people, because he was such an actor's, composer, he wasn't as precious. I mean, maybe he was really precious with certain things note-wise, but musically not as precious with other things if it was really an acting piece. And so, someone like Mandy Patinkin or Bernadette Peters, like they've taken that material and done their thing with it and breathed this performance into it. And so I try to just go back to the notes and I want to learn the notes note perfect because there are always going to be things that they did differently. Like literally lyrics are different on cast recordings sometimes, little notes, the rhythms that you always thought were some way, and it's just different. And so not just to be like the nerd who is like, oh, I got all the notes right, but at least starting there and understanding the material like at the base level. And then that kind of right there just completely tunes out any of the performance that's come before you. And now you're kind of starting from scratch. And I've been lucky enough to do that and hopefully do that successfully. So it doesn't, because you do want to pay homage to the material and to the writers, but you don't need to really pay homage to the actors, as wonderful as they may have been.
Well, I have to tell you, I saw your Into the Woods and your moment with the father character, the mysterious man, was so emotional. And it was so lovely because you took your time with it and you added this this emotional layer and these beats that that I've never heard in any recording. And it really drove the message home and it made it new again. So I have to thank you as a performer. I mean, that scene was heart-wrenching for me. So let's talk about Sondheim. We know you're doing Everybody Rise at the Hollywood Bowl. What was the first Sondheim musical or role that really kind of spoke to you or that you were like, I'm going to listen to this album again and again and again?
Well, for me, just because I did Into the Woods Junior and I played the wolf. So Into the Woods Junior, for those that don't know, is just the first act of Into the Woods. And for those who don't know Into the Woods, second act goes wild. So the first act literally ends with happily ever after, and then the second act begins with what the hell do we do now?
Yeah.
And takes a very dark turn. So I was able to do kind of like a stripped, sweet children's version of Into the Woods. So of course, those melodies burn brightly, and it's like a big part of my young youth theater experiences. Into the Woods. It's just such a great. I think it's great for kids too, because it's all of your favorite characters, but now they're just dropped in a village together. So Into the Woods is definitely one that comes to mind when I was like kind of a teenager, but something that has like moved me so much as an artist that I literally cannot hear the chords of the Act One finale without bursting into tears. As Sunday in the Park with George.
Oh, 100%. And you're right. It's those first few chords and your heart like stops.
It's crazy. Apparently, I guess spoiler alert, we're singing it because my friend Doug who's the associate musical director, was playing it for Patti the other day, and she said the same thing that I always say, which is like, why does this make you feel so much? It's actually not a very complicated, of all the Sondheim chords, it's actually not very complicated and not super difficult to play. But he's literally found he talks about, now this is getting super nerdy, and if you don't know Sunday in the Park with George, there's these like phrases that the painter George Seurat like says to himself all the time: order, balance, tension, light, harmony, composition. And so if you actually break down those chords, he kind of strikes the balance and hits all of those words. And that is why you have this unexplainable emotional response. And like for that and so many reasons, that musical is so important to me. I think it's just so much about art and commerce trying to kind of coexist, which, look at where we're at right now in these times with all these, necessary strikes going on. So it's ever relevant, always is. And I think about that role in that musical all too often. So that will always take the cake for me.
And it deals with so many life issues. It's so heartbreaking. As artists, we have to balance our personal life with our art. And sometimes that balance does not happen. The choices we make with people that we're with and the absolute heartbreak, getting older, our relationship with our parents, like it's all in that musical. Yeah. Now Sondheim, with his passing, now his music his projects are now considered classic Broadway. For somebody whose first CD that they ever bought was Into the Woods, makes me feel very old.
Yeah.
But why is it important for us to continue producing Sondheim works, keeping his works in the spotlight? What does Sondheim's work have to offer theater, present day theater, the most?
I think it's kind of mentioning what you were just saying about the last question, which is that like it's his pieces speak so much to the artist and like to art itself. And like a lot of writers, it's somewhat autobiographical with like shows like Merrily We Roll Along and of course Sunday in the Park with George. But they're classics. To me, they're the best, and they will always reign supreme. But I also think if you ask a lot of musical theater performers and musical theater actors, they will say Sondheim. And I think this is the same reason why a lot of people are, feel that Shakespeare is unbeatable and a classic and something to be studied, because it's such a pleasure to learn Sondheim music. When you look in it, it's like it just keeps opening up. There are descending melodies and just the bass notes that are kind of foreshadowing the plot. It's like too smart for its own good sometimes. And I think that's why it needs to be studied, because it's just, I think, musical theater at its finest. And I really think that when done as well as the best versions of the best productions are, I think musical theater is probably one of the highest art forms we have.
I am so fascinated by like the behind the scenes. So knowing that you're performing at the Hollywood Bowl on Sunday with these mega superstars, like what's the rehearsal process like? Is it you guys are just gonna have a dress rehearsal and that's it, or are you rehearsing all week? Like what's happening?
It's a little bit of both. It's not just a dress rehearsal. We're going to have 3 days, but it is a full 2+ hour show with an intermission. So, there's no dialogue. It's all just, these are going to be, I was kind of told not to say exactly what we're doing, but It is a show, and it's all the ones you want and all the ones you can't believe we're going to do, especially back to back. Like doing major climaxes of major works with like Brian Stokes Mitchell and Patti Lupone, and then going, to me doing something kind of outrageous from Follies, or, Sierra and Norm doing a duet, and it's really well curated and directed by Bobby Longbottom. I mean, thankfully, we've all been having a lot of conversations and we kind of know what the story is that we're telling. There's a bit of a thread and a theme. And then we're all working completely on our own. I mean, I am very much in rehearsal as we speak. I mean, there's no vodka in this. This is just water because I got to get right. I mean, like, I am hammering lyrics. I think Patti told a mutual friend recently that like every Sondheim musical, every Sondheim song like has a Waterloo in it. Like there's just constant waterfalls of lyrics and information, and you want to say them with conviction and you want to believe them. So I know everybody. I happen to know firsthand that everybody is working individually because it's a lot of solo stuff, and the duets should go very well as well. Some people have played these parts on Broadway and even won awards for some of the songs they're going to be singing. And some people like me are getting a first crack at something they've kind of always wanted to do. So we're going to show up to that first day of rehearsal, not like we have 3 days to learn, but we have 3 days to like work it and kind of drill it. And then just chuck it up there in front of, tens of thousands.
Now, as that young theater kid looking up at like Patti Lupone and Brian Stokes Mitchell growing up, do you ever get nerves? Like, so whenever I do a big first rehearsal, my first rehearsal is always awful because I'm like so in my head. It's like I've forgotten everything I've learned, all the lyrics, all the notes, and I'm my own worst enemy. What kind of like first rehearsal are you going to get nervous? Are you going to like try to chum it up with Patti and like?
Well, thankfully I've met Patti, and I know that like we're both excited to work together. I mean, I know I'm freaking out to work with her. She said she's excited to work with me, but we'll see. But of course, I want to impress these people. They're my heroes. But I think if I really make it about that, then I will fail. I really have gotten good over the years at kind of reserving my fandom and just earning that relationship with the work. Anytime you work with or get to know somebody who, is kind of larger than life, you want to not only humanize them, but you want to not have that even in the air. They're so used to having people try to kind of, perform for them or get validation. And I know that comes with time. I mean, I don't even know if by the end of this whole experience, I imagine they'll develop a level of respect, but that's, I want to do a good job for, honestly, it sounds a little corny, but I want to do a good job for Sondheim's honor more than anything. And so I think obviously all those other things will come if I just do the work and, rely on the training that I have and rely on the preparation that I'm going to do to get there. And then, I know it will come to me, unless it's on somebody else to not do the right thing. But I really do think that it's going to be a very warm and welcoming room also. So I think the table is set. And of course I'm nervous, but I like to talk about this thing called healthy fear. I think if you're a little nervous, that's right. And you're right in the right spot. If you're 100%. Overcome with nerves, it will cripple you. And if you're not nervous at all, well, then you're going to surprise yourself and mess up to such a degree because you're too relaxed.
100%. What I really love about this celebration is the texture of voices. There's so many different textures that we're going to be hearing on stage. It's like, all the different genres of Broadway. I couldn't think of a better way to honor Sondheim. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We know our social and political scene in the nation is a mess. We saw the unfortunate neo-Nazi demonstration during Parade on Broadway. We see the hate not just coming from politicians, but from our neighbors. What has your experience been as a Jewish boy growing up in New York, and in the industry? Is there anything you want to share, and even about your fear about like what's happening in our nation, that a Broadway show is having neo-Nazis protest?
I mean, there's so many things, unfortunately, with the state of our politics that are very upsetting, and especially over the past 5 to 10 years. I mean, I think that it's important to denounce anti-Semitism and any racism whenever you see it. I don't think just standing idly by is okay. It never has been. And, theater can be controversial, but identity should never be. And to me, I am a very proud Jewish person. I also, I know that there's a lot of conversations surrounding Jewish actors playing Jewish roles. And I think it's really important to the story, and it's a part of their experience, and it's a part of the character's journey. It's not just their last name, especially should be done by a Jewish performer. It's a really scary time, but it also, I always thought that theater is very brave, because you get up there and you are completely vulnerable in front of people. And I think a lot of audience members that aren't the respectable audience members, they forget all the time that they're in front of a human being. They think that it's a movie theater. You'll see people with crazy amounts of candy and on their phones and all sorts of stuff. So like it's a brave and vulnerable thing to do in that respect. And then when you're someone like Ben, who's doing subject matter that is really obviously close to home for him, being a Jewish actor, but then to have people outside protesting it just shows how much, I guess, how important these pieces actually are to put on. Because look, I don't want to say something like, if it's creating controversy, it must be relevant. But no, I mean, I think it's important. It's important to stay steadfast in telling these stories and having these performers out there being vulnerable, and performers should really be protected. I mean, there's also that side of it that's very dangerous and scary, and the proper security measures need to be taken, because we are really actually just up there, in living color and not on some screen that gives a real fourth wall.
I want to talk about your original music. When a theater actor puts out, an album, everyone's like, okay, let's see what they got. What's going on? There's not a script. There's not a character. Were you trepidatious at all about putting out your own music? Because it's a side of Skylar that we haven't seen or heard before.
Yeah, well, look, there's a bunch of ways I could have gone, and I think that's why I didn't put out music for so long, because I was like, you got to do an album, you got to do a holiday album or a cover songs, and I could do that. I've done movies where it's all cover songs, and I love that, but I never picked one. And then during the pandemic, it kind of picked me in a weird way. I had the time. I was playing my piano constantly. I've written music my whole life, but I've just never really shared it publicly. And then I just kind of wanted to have fun. Like, I obviously, like, through this conversation, you could tell I love listening to show tunes. I love listening to Sondheim. I love listening to classics like Billy Joel, but also I like pop music, especially good pop music. And I think that the stigma surrounding pop has kind of gone away lately with people like Ed Sheeran and people that really like just write great songs. Yeah. And I was just a kind of a project. I really approach it like a full-on hobby. Could it take off one day? Sure. But like the advantage of not having a label behind me and not having these pressures is that I get to be completely in charge. And that's very cathartic for me as a performer who is always a vessel for somebody else's words, to now be able to just say my own. And certain ones will hit hard and be heavy, and other ones will just be fun and make you want to dance. I think a lot of my stuff in the pandemic, especially early in the pandemic, was kind of a release and an escape to a time where you can just kind of get up and dance with somebody. So that was a reflection of what I was going through at the time there. And now with a new song that I just released called Easy, it's kind of a lo-fi jazz standard, that's got a kind of a synthy kind of pop thing going on too. So I just have fun with it. And I've been working with this amazing producer named Stefan Litt. And just the two of us get together and we write songs and record them in the same day. And it's like ready to go. We still have a queue of stuff we haven't released yet that we will over the next few months.
Well, I absolutely love it. And I have to tell you, during COVID, your live streams with you at the piano was such a joy. And it was such a positive beacon of light for artists and for everybody out there. But it's like, we can be creative. We can look into ourselves. We can do what we've always wanted to do during this period. But I loved your live streams. I was like, next.
Thank you.
We need the next one.
It was a real joy for me. It honestly gave me something really special to wake up for. And it wasn't so much about the popularity of it or anything. It was about the connection. I really
100%
connecting to people. And yeah, I was equally as excited. Like, oh, well, what song am I going to do? And really wouldn't rehearse it too much. I mean, anyone who tuned into, I call them home keys. Anyone that tuned in, they'd be the first to tell you, like, oh, there's mess ups. Like he clunks a couple notes or retries a high note. But that to me was like the fun part about it was
It
that
made it so endearing, and it was like, yes, we are all in this together, no matter, who you are, what your level is. Like, this is our journey together. It was such an absolute joy. Now, what is your creative process when you write music? What comes to you first? Are you scribbling with like candles in the background, or like
it's
what's
funny.
your process?
It's funny. It depends. Like the other day, I actually just wrote a song at the piano, just myself, and like was going through this corporate, or I was in the shower. It's always in the shower. I like have a melody in my head in the shower, and then I have to run because I'm so forgetful to wet. Like, if only there were cameras. Like I'd run to get the phone to do a voice memo just to get the melody or the hook or the thought or the chords, and then I take it to the piano. So sometimes it happens like that when I'm alone, or if I have a straight up writing session, which I've had a bunch of over the past year. That is kind of a fun, that I love. I'm a Libra, meaning I love to collaborate. I just love like working with people and bouncing off my own ideas. And it always kind of starts with like, so where are you at? And sometimes it's like a place where I'm at musically. Like, I've been listening to a lot of Phineas. I really like Phineas, who, for those that don't know Phineas, he's an amazing singer-songwriter, but also is Billie Eilish's brother and main producer. Like, he's a mad genius, but I also love his specific songs as an artist. So like sometimes I will not use that as a reference, but just almost use that as an inspiration. Or when I'll have a writing session and they say, what's going on with you, I'll talk about something that's going on in my life. And often someone in the room will say, ooh, I liked what you just said, how it's, that phrase you just said, like that's a melody or something. And then it just starts. It's like a little heartbeat. Generally, there's like a hook or a chorus that kind of comes first. And then I build it out over the course of a couple hours. And then take a little food break. And then since I do it at my friend Stefan's house, it was a full setup. We'd lay down a vocal. Sometimes we'll just lay down a vocal and then, let it sit for a second and then fully build it out. But more often than not, we end up building out right on the spot and it's all happening at once. And then I'm coming up with the harmonies and the backups and, literally from like 11 to 8 p.m., all of a sudden I have a fully produced song and I
That's
just start with a laptop and some feelings. So
that's insane. Now, Skylar, with your library of music, your original music, what song best represents where you are emotionally today?
Oh my God. That's tough. I'm bad with favorites. What song in my emotional library?
Yeah, like that represents where you are today. It's like, yep, that song is who I am today. That's where I'm feeling it today.
I feel like girls just want to have fun. No, I think like something that came to mind is Just Haven't Met You Yet, but that's not actually relevant. Gosh, I'm so bad at these, and it's such bad TV or radio because it's just an actor thinking. I'd say maybe some sort of a Billy Joel vibe. Let's just say New York State of Mind right now. All these places I've been, but like these days, it's always been a favorite song of mine. But I think it's because it just always reminds me of home, but more specifically my family, and I'm such a family person. So no matter where I go, I always need to return back to them, whether it's in New York or just like wherever they may be, because family is to me the most important thing. It has kept me grounded throughout all the highs and lows of this whole career, and it is the most important thing to me. So yeah, definitely something like We Are Family or New York State of Mind kind of a thing.
What co-star has taught you the most about the industry or the skill?
Definitely trying to think. I learned a lot working with Nick Nolte. I did a show with him for a very long time. I just love to hear his old stories. But him and James Cromwell both said the same thing when I was on set doing work with both of them. One was for another series. And like they sometimes when you're on TV and film, I'm such a good boy. I try to be such a good boy, meaning like if the script supervisor tells me, hey, you drank it with the wrong hand, or all these like continuity things, I'm pretty good about threading that needle. But both of them were such actors that like they're like, don't listen to her, just don't listen. And I'm like, what? No. I think I did it wrong. They're like, just don't even, I hate that they came up to you. And it's not, I'm not a purist in that way. Like, you got to match it. We are making a team, so it can't not match. However, I do find myself now on my show going up to young people sometimes and saying, hey, like, don't worry so much about that. Just even don't worry so much about the words if they're really struggling. And just to try to find that point of connection. It's kind of like, just like come back to that stuff you used to think instinctually when you first started. It will actually make you go pretty far, especially as you train more, learn more, and work more and gain more experiences. Then you can kind of get caught up in the technical side. So you want to really like always, go back to that. So yeah, I'd say those two gentlemen actually influenced me a lot in that moment.
I can't thank you enough for chatting. I know how busy you are. We're actually going to end the show today. We're going to play the acoustic version of Without You. Do you want to intro the song and why you did the acoustic version?
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually did the acoustic version sitting right here at this very piano.
I recognize the piano.
So, no, Without You is just like that feeling of being like, of having a whole life, of thinking, kind of who you are, and then realizing that someone comes along and you just never want to be without them. I mean, a lot of love songs feel that way, but there's just like an intoxication about that song to me that I really like. The rhythm, and I wanted to strip it away. I really like doing that with my songs. Every single one of my songs actually does have a piano acoustic version. I just haven't released them. So maybe one day I'll just do a full acoustic set.
Love it.
That one in particular, I just really liked how different it sounded. So yeah, I hope people will enjoy it.
Love it, love it. Skylar, where do you want everybody to find and follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, anything that's coming out. They're all exclusively at Skylar Astin. So just my name, no fakers. There's a lot of fakers out there, but I have a blue check. So if you see that, it's me. Not on Twitter because they made me pay. And I just don't. Why are we doing that? But yeah, so at Skylar Astin in general.
And if you're in SoCal, or even if not in SoCal, come to the Hollywood Bowl this Sunday. I mean, what an embarrassment of riches. Skylar and the whole team there celebrating Sondheim. I cannot wait. I'll probably get there 2 hours early just to make sure that, I can calm down in time for it to start.
You go early enough, you might catch a bit of a dress rehearsal sound check. So
I actually love that part. I love that part. Skylar, thank you so much. I know you have to run and learn more Sondheim words. So thank you for spending the time with us. And, just a big thank you for everything you do for the community, for the theater community, the entertainment community. And I know you're a big ally to the LGBTQ community. Can't thank you enough.
Always. I attribute it all to some great parenting. And I will always be an ally. And I will always not only support the theater community, but it's my bread and butter. And it's where I love to be.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's all, folks. It's a grab bag of fun here every time at On the Rocks. Big thank you to our engineer, Tony Sweet, our social media clip editor, Alexis Mendez. Coming up, we have Armando and Kenny from TLC's 90 Day Fiancé. We're also having comedian Allison Reese, and we have another big surprise at the end of August. I can tell you soon. Please like, share, subscribe so we can continue bringing this fabulous programming coming your way. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay sexy, and if you drink, stay tipsy. All right, we're going to leave you with the acoustic version of Without You. We'll see you next week.
I will find you just beyond the ways I left behind you. And now I'm saying I don't wanna let you slip away. I don't wanna leave, but I can't stay. So I'll wait, I'll be beside you. And now I'm ready to go. Ready to go. We're going too slow. 'Cause I never wanna live without you. All I think of is you. 'Cause 'cause I never wanna live without one more second. Just when I was not expecting to feel this way, but I don't wanna leave you close behind. And I would rather go than stay inside my brain. Let's stop pretending. And now I'm ready to go, 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 go. Ready to go, 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 go. We're going too slow, 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 slow. 'Cause I never wanna live without you. You, all I think of is you. 'Cause I never wanna live without. I just wanna live, I just wanna live. 'Cause I never wanna live without. I just wanna live, I just wanna live. Oh, I never wanna live without you, no, 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 no. 'Cause all I think about is you, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I never wanna live without you. 'Cause I never wanna live without you. You, yeah.
This has been another episode of On the Rocks. Tweet me and slide into my DMs on Twitter and Instagram at On the Rocks On Air. Find everything On the Rocks for free at ontherocksradioshow.com. Subscribe, like, review, and share. Until next week, stay fabulous.